the switch statement. So similar to if else, nested if else, and else if ladder, this is one more branching statement called the switch statement. So what switch does is kind of similar to the if and else. So consider there is one integer variable declared as n about this, and n is associated with a value of some integer. You can say for this example, let's consider n equal to 1. So what switch statement does is we write switch and the variable that needs to be computed, or the condition that is to be checked upon. So here switch n, and as we know the value of n is integer, that is 1, so n equal to 1. And inside this switch bracket, it just checks for different cases. So case 1, so when n equal to 1, what it has to do, when n equal to 2, what it has to do, and when it is nothing among all these cases, that is default, so what it has to do. And you may have observed that there is a break statement inside each case statement. So this is quite important while writing switch cases in Java. So basically what happens is when you execute one case, we don't want to execute the code below this. So we just want to break out of this switch. So this break is nothing but escape, you can say escape sequence. So using break, you come out of your current block, that is this curly brace. So break and you come out of this current block. So we don't want to execute the succeeding cases, we just want to execute that particular case and come out of that code. So in the same way this works. So we just write switch, as I said, n equal to 1. So case, it will match with n. So it is 1, yes it is 1, and it will execute this block. Suppose n equal to 2, so it will come inside this case. This doesn't match, so it won't execute this, and it will execute this, that is case equal to 2, and execute this code block and break. If n is nothing among 1 and 2, it will come to the default and execute this default block and break. So it is quite similar to if else, and kind of it is a branching statement basically, and the syntax is different, but the purpose is quite similar to if else statements. Yeah, now we have learned this all the branching statements. Basically you can say the logical comparison and performing different computations on different conditions, if several conditions are met. Now let's proceed towards the looping statements. So Java supports three loop statements basically, that is for loop, while loop, and do while loop. So for loop is quite simple to understand. What are loops basically? Let's understand first. So loops are nothing but you can say a block of statements that needs to be executed more than once until a particular condition is met. So in Java, we have a for loop, while loop, and do while loop, and now we are looking for the for loop. So let's see the syntax of for loop first, and then proceed towards understanding. So how the for loop is declared in Java. So we just write for, and this is nothing but the initialization of your variable, or upon which you want to check the condition. So this phase before first semicolon is called as initialization. The second part of the for loop is condition. So what condition you have to check is to be specified over here, and the next third part of the for loop is your increment or decrement. So you can perform according to your requirement whatever increment or decrement operation you want to perform, and according to this your code will execute. So now to show it how the for loop execute is, let's understand the sequence of its execution first. So how it executes, it will first initialize this value I equal to 0, and then it will check this condition if I is less than n. For an instance, let's consider the value of n is equal to 2. Okay, so here we have initialized I equal to 0, I. So 0 is less than 2. Is it true? Yes, it is true. So now it won't jump to this third section. It will execute this for block. So this code body will execute n times from I0 to n minus 1. Okay. So now let's go with this sequence. Now I is 0. So this condition is met. Okay. So this part is executed and the n will increment. So now the value of here it shouldn't be n, it should be I basically. So I will be incremented. Okay, and when I is incremented, now the value of I is 1. So 1 is less than 2. Yes, it is correct. So again this block of code will be executed, and next again the I will be incremented. So now the value of I is 2. So if 2 is less than 2, so no, that is false, and it won't evaluate to this, and it will come out of this for loop. And similarly for nested for loop, as we've seen for nested if, so anything can that is nested inside another block is first that part is executed and later it jumps to its parent block basically. So inside this you can see first this block will execute it, and later when this block gets executed it will again go for this. So it is quite need to pay attention over here that if we use j equal to 0, j less than 10, and j plus plus, so what happens here is j equal to 0, yes the condition is true, j is less than 10, it comes inside, it will execute this 20 times. Again it comes out, j increments, this condition is true, again this will be executed 20 times. So this code body will execute 200 times in total. So this is quite important to note over here how the nested loops work basically. So this was for loop. The while loop works in similar to the for loop. The purpose of this is same, but let's understand in detail like what is the syntax and how the block is executed. So while it checks for a condition basically. As for loop, we have seen that in the second part of the for loop we specify the condition. Over here we specify the condition inside the while block, you can say a while expression itself. So while, and we give the condition, if this evaluates to true it will execute this. But over here it is really important to have increment or decrement operator inside the while. Otherwise there are certain cases called as infinite loops. So in that case your program will never stop, and there should be some condition or stopping condition where your loops shall break or loops shall stop, otherwise your program may lead to infinite execution. So that we won't need, and ultimately it will overflow your memory. So here in the end we are at the end of the while loop, we are performing some computations on this operation basically, and we are giving it a condition where to stop. So here we write read int and enter. So read int is nothing but you can say a function to accept from the user, and it enters. So if user enters 1, again it will keep on executing this, and if user enters something other than 1, so it will come out of this loop. So I would just like to throw you a question that what is the minimum number of times the loop is executed, and what is the maximum number of times the loop will be executed. So you can just have it as a work for you, and execute it yourself and see inside the Java console basically. So let's proceed ahead. So the do while loop. So the uniqueness of do while loop over here is do executes your block of statements even when the condition is false at first. So for example, what is done over here is do and execute these statements. Here we know that there is no condition check, so condition check is at the end of this do loop, that is while response is equal to 1. So even if response is not equal to 1, this will execute at least once in its life cycle, in its loop's life cycle. So here one thing is important to note that even if the condition is false, the do while loop will execute the block at least once, and if the condition is false, not more than once, and if it is if the condition returns to be true, then it will execute until the condition is met. So again I would like to throw you the question same for this as well. So what is the minimum number of times the loop is executed, and what is the maximum number of times the loop is executed? Now let's come to the escape statements basically. So why these are called as escape statements? Because they help you to get out of your current block or stay into your current block, and such kind of things. So we are going to see the two important keywords, basically the break and continue, inside this section. So the break statement, what it does is it causes an exit from the innermost containing while, do, for, or switch statement. So innermost, as I said, from the current block. So in this example, you can see I am inside this for block, and again inside this for block there is a if block. So there is a break statement for this if. Okay. So when I write break, it comes out of this if, and out of the for loop as well. So generally a break is never used with if, you can say it is used with while, do, for, or switch statement. So when I write this break, it will jump out of this if, of course it is coming out, and it will jump out of its innermost for loop. So it is only used with while, do, for, or switch statements. Let's come to the next slide, that is continue keyword. So what it does is it can only be used with same while, do, or for loop. Yeah, it cannot be used with your switch statement. So what continue statement does, it causes the innermost loop to start the next iteration immediately. Now let's consider this example. For int I equal to 0, I less than max id, I plus plus, if this. Okay, if this condition is true, immediately continue this. So what this continue does is it never jumps to the next line. It tells the interpreter that I want to continue my previous block. So if this condition is true, again this is executed. If this condition is true, again this is executed, and it never comes down. If it is false, then this won't be executed, and your system.out.print will be executed. So if this evaluates to false, this statement is executed, system.out.print user id, whatever it is. And if it evaluates to true, the loop continues until the condition is met. So that is the simple application for continue statement. Okay, so now we have seen all the basics of Java. So let's summarize them once again into the bit in the middle of our section. So what we saw was the general idea of what Java is. It is platform independent, write once, run anywhere. We have seen several different data types into Java, how we declare the variables, how we initialize them. We also saw several branching statements, especially if else, nested else if ladder, and you can say the switch statement. Also we saw several looping statements. Those are for loop, while loop, and do while loop, and there are several different distinctions from each other. Later we saw some of the escape keywords. Those are break and continue. We saw for what purpose they are used and how we can use them to our best advantage if we want to perform some kind of escapes into our blocks and loops, or you can say branching statements such as switch, basically. So now we are coming to the another important feature of Java, that is an array. So let me give you an example before starting with this concept. Consider if I want to store the roll number of the students inside my program. So for each student, I may, if consider we don't know what arrays are basically, and if I want to store the data for 100 students, so now till the knowledge we have, what we can do is we can create 100 different variables for each and every student, those integer variables, and allocate the roll numbers to each and every variable. But that is a lot of tedious job, you can say, and it is a poor programming practice, and lot of code is not unmaintainable in such cases. So what to do? So Java has provided a feature called as arrays. So inside arrays we can store multiple elements inside a single object or inside a single instance of that data type, you can say. But with arrays there is one constraint assigned, that it stores a list of similar things only. So it is necessary to note here similar things. So if I'm creating an integer array, it will store all the variables or all the values of integer type. It won't store any other type. So of course, if I want to store 100 roll numbers, I can just create one variable, one array variable, set, give it a length or give it a size of 100, and I can store my 100 values inside that variable. But with arrays, there are certain different syntaxes and different conventions assigned. We will see in our succeeding slides. So let's understand characteristics first. So an array has a fixed name, a fixed type, and a fixed name. So we fixed length. Sorry. So we cannot dynamically change the characteristics of array into our program, or you can say during runtime, basically. And these must be declared when the array is created, of course, so they cannot be altered at runtime, and array sizes cannot be changed during the execution of code. So as I said, you yeah. So let's understand how array is stored inside memory. Consider we have created an array, my array, of integer type, and it has 8 values stored inside that array. So those are 363, 163, 41. So these are the contiguous memory locations allocated to this array. So, how the array elements are accessed. So let's understand what is this first. So this is my array has room for 8 elements. The elements are accessed by their indexes in Java. Array indices start at 0. So if I want to access this array, I will write like this element inside array. I will write my array of 0. So if I write my array square bracket and 0 inside it, this it will return me 3. If I write my array of 1, it will return me 6. If I write my array, return me 3. So in this way I can access the variables or the elements inside my array in this way. And similarly, if I want to store something or override into this, I can write my array of 0 equal to my new value, so that will get overridden with this values that are stored at individual indexes. So let's get ahead with how to declare an array inside Java, how to initialize that array, and how to store statements inside that array. So uh, as simple as that, just write your data type and your array, and this is quite important, the opening and closing square brackets. This indicates that this is an array, so your compiler or interpreter gets to know that this variable is an array. So yeah, now how to initialize it or how to give some size to it. So that is using the new variable. So we write my array equal to new int 8. So this set up 8 integer size spaces in memory labeled from my array of 0 to my array of 7. And this is also one more way to declare an array. So either you can write it this way or this way. So int my array square brackets equal to new int 8. So here we are saying that this is an array of type integer that will store 8 values of 4 bytes each. So integer has the size of 4 bytes inside memory, so 4 bytes each of 8 elements that array is gonna hold. So how we are going to assign a value to those to that array, basically. So yes, as we have seen, we can access array using their indices, and here I want to store different values inside my array. So in this way we can do, like, my array of 0 equal to 3, my array of 1 equal to 6. So inside the memory it will be like into my first element of my array will be 3, second will be 6, third will be 3, in that way. So here one important thing to note is the array indices start with 0 basically. So if you want to access the first element inside array, I have to know that it is at my 0th location. So that is one of the unique property of. And we can also create and initialize an array in one step instead of doing this. So just write my array, give a block in a curly brace, and write your 8 elements in one stroke. So you can write n number of elements over here, and that much will be the size of your array. So over here there are 8 elements, so the size of array is 8. So this is just creation and initialization of arrays in one step. Now iterating through arrays. So how do we do that? Same. See, now if we have an array that has the length of more than 10 or something like that, it becomes very tedious to access it one by one, like a of 0, a of 1 up to a of 10 or a of 100 maybe. So that is quite tedious and again unmaintainable. So for loops are very useful and handy when dealing with arrays, and when we want to perform an iteration through arrays. So that can be achieved using this. So similarly, as we have studied for loop earlier, We can write for int I equal to 0, I less than my array dot length. So this length is a unique method that is given by the array class, you can say, and that gives returns you the length of your array. And then we have did the increment operation over here, and inside that for loop we are writing my array of I equal to get some value, or you can assign some value over here randomly. Okay, so my array of 0, my array of 1 up to my array of length, your array will be iterated. So as simple as that. Now array of objects. So what are those? So far we have looked at an array of primitive types. So primitive types are integer, or you can say float, double. So in similar way we can use that. But what are array of objects? So objects are nothing but instance of classes, and we can also create several different objects into an array. So that is nothing but array of objects. So into our later succeeding lectures we are going to see how the classes are declared, and how the objects are created, and we will uh, get a deep dive into how to program things in Java. So for declaring an array of objects we have to follow these three steps. Similarly, like suppose we have a class name student, we give an object name like this. So student space student and a square bracket in front of it. Similarly, we can create the array. This is declaration of array, creation of array. We specify the space or the size of that array, and then we create student objects and add them to this array. So in this way, so similar to how it worked with the primitive types, just your objects are changing from user defined class.